Hello and welcome to our video. Today's story is an original mystery called Sally's Sweet Revenge. I hope you enjoy it. Chapter 1. Sally drove her rusty pickup truck down the dusty road, the morning sun warming her back as she made her way to the farmer's market. She breathed in the earthy smells of manure and hay that reminded her of home. Sally loved coming to the market each week, not just to sell her jams and baked goods, but also to chat with the regular vendors and townsfolk who frequented the stalls. As she approached her booth, Sally immediately sensed something was wrong. Jars and pastry boxes littered the ground, their contents smashed and strewn about. Last year's first-place jam ribbon lay trampled in the dirt. Sally jumped out of her truck and rushed over, hands shaking as she surveyed the damage. Her baked goods for the county fair tomorrow were ruined. All her hard work, wasted. Hot tears stung Sally's eyes, but she quickly blinked them away. She wouldn't let anyone see her cry. After the initial shock wore off, a realization dawned on Sally: this was no accident. Someone had intentionally destroyed her booth. But who? And why? Sally's mind raced through the possible suspects. Her jam-making rival, Vera Blankenship, always jokingly threatened to sabotage Sally so she could win first prize. But Sally couldn't imagine the spirited old woman actually following through with vandalism. Then there was Brent Hart, the smug county fair judge. He loved lording his power over the nervous participants, especially younger ones like Sally. Had he wrecked her booth to stack the competition against her? Sally glanced around at the other vendors, who were just beginning to set up their stalls. The candlestick maker, cheese maker, pie baker, any one of them could have seen her as a threat and wanted her eliminated from the fair. Determination coursed through Sally's veins. She would find out who destroyed her hard work, no matter what it took. She immediately began her investigation, starting with Vera. "Morning, Vera." Sally forced a smile as she approached the crotchety old woman arranging baskets of squash. "Well, hey there, Sally." Vera's wrinkled face creased into a grin. "You're here early for once. Trying to scope out my killer jam recipes before the fair?" Sally laughed lightly. "Maybe. You'll have some tough competition this year." She studied Vera closely for any hint of guilt as they exchanged playful banter about their jam rivalry, but saw nothing suspicious. Sally moved on to the other vendors, making casual small talk as she looked for clues that might implicate them. But she gleaned no useful information. Finally, Sally spotted Brent Hart striding toward the fairgrounds, spurs jingling as he walked. She raced over to him. "Morning, Mr. Hart," she said, struggling to keep her voice even. He tipped his wide-brimmed cowboy hat curtly. "Sally. I wanted to ask for any last-minute tips before judging tomorrow. My baked goods booth could really use a blue ribbon this year." Sally's eyes bored intensely into Brent's. He held her gaze without flinching. "Can't offer much help there. Just present your best work and hope it satisfies the judges." Sally deflated. If Brent had ruined her booth, he didn't show it. She thanked him politely and turned away, disheartened. With no solid leads, how would she ever find the culprit? The sun rose higher as Sally cleaned up the wreckage, salvaging what she could for tomorrow. She had no choice but to bake all night to replace what was lost and still have a chance at a ribbon. Suddenly, the cheesemaker hurried over. "Sally. I'm so sorry about your booth. I was up early prepping for today and saw someone sneak out of the lot around dawn, figured I ought to tell you." Sally's pulse quickened. Finally, a real clue. "Did you see who it was? Or notice anything else?" The woman shook her head. "Too dark to make out a face. But I glimpsed a wide-brimmed hat like those rodeo fellows wear." Brent Hart. Sally felt certain he was the vandal. A wide grin spread across her face as she thanked the cheesemaker profusely. She would still have to bake all night, but now Sally could rest easy knowing justice would prevail. The blue ribbon was hers for the taking. Chapter 2. Sally hurried home, her mind swirling as she devised a plan. If Brent tried anything funny at the fair tomorrow, she'd be ready for him. To replace the jams, she was able to salvage some of the jams at her farm stand booth. She had several jars at home, so she just need to bring some of those the next day. So the jam is covered. Onto the baked goods. After grabbing some ingredients from the farmhouse pantry, Sally headed out to the barn. The afternoon sun shone brightly through the rafters, illuminating floating bits of hay. Sally set up her mixing bowls and utensils on a wooden table under one of the open loft windows. A breeze drifted in, carrying scents of honeysuckle and sweetgrass. Sally took a deep breath, drawing strength from the familiar smells. She would need all her energy and wits to pull this off. First, Sally whipped up several batches of flaky pie crust, kneading the dough with fury as she imagined Brent's smug grin. She pictured herself leading the police to arrest him after catching him red-handed. That imagery spurred her on through 5 sticky fruit fillings, 24 hand-rolled biscuits, and several pans of cinnamon rolls bursting with glistening swirls. When her family came in from the fields for dinner, Sally turned down offers of help and shooed them away. "This is something I gotta do myself," she said with a determined glint in her eye. They knew better than to argue, so left Sally to her mission. As the last sliver of light faded over the horizon, Sally lit the kerosene lamps in the barn and kept working under their soft glow. Mixing. Rolling. Filling. Topping. Baking batch after batch of pastries, finally finishing as the rooster's first crows echoed outside. If you are enjoying the story so far, please like our video. If you feel that this video will help you learning English, please subscribe to our channel. Now back to the video. Chapter 3. Exhausted but satisfied, Sally boxed up her creations and loaded everything into the bed of the pickup truck. She would catch a quick catnap, then get back to the fairgrounds early to set her trap. When Sally arrived, the sky glowed pink with impending dawn. She carefully arranged her baked goods, making the display look as tempting as possible. Then she took out a few spare jars of last year's blue ribbon jam. Sally opened one jar and dipped her finger in the sweet spread. She smudged a bit onto the boxes of pastries, the lip of the jar, and the serving utensils. Taking the rest of the open jam, she drizzled some onto the ground by her stall. Any fingerprints or traces left by the culprit would lead straight to his identity. After positioning everything just so, Sally hid behind the squash vendor's stall to wait and watch. Soon other vendors and early crowd members began arriving to set up. But there was no sign of Brent. The morning wore on. Sally helped a few customers, keeping one eye trained on her booth while trying not to seem suspicious. Finally, she spotted Brent swaggering onto the fairgrounds. Sally's pulse quickened. This was it. She held her breath as he neared her stall, his spurs jingling ominously with each step. Brent cast furtive glances around before reaching out to smash another jar of jam. "Aha!" Sally shouted, leaping from her hiding place. Brent startled backwards, brown hat tumbling into the dirt. His eyes widened in alarm. "Caught you red-handed, or jam-handed," Sally declared. She gestured to the jam coating Brent's fingers. "Sheriff. I've got the vandal right here." The sheriff hurried over while curious crowds gathered. Brent sputtered explanations, but the proof was damning. Sally gave a detailed account of the jam vandalism, her thorough investigation, and finally the triumphant trap she had set. The sheriff led a protesting Brent away in handcuffs. Sally grinned after him, relieved to have answers and justice. She turned back to find Vera standing beside the booth. "Well shoot, Sally. Color me impressed." The elderly woman let loose a hearty cackle. "You really figured it all out just like a detective on the television programs. I reckon that sly judge won't be messing with your ribbons anymore." Sally smiled triumphantly as a cheer went up from the dispersing crowd. "I couldn't let him get away with it, Vera. All's fair now in jam contest ribbons." They laughed together, jam rivalry set aside for the moment. The day passed enjoyably after that. Fairgoers clamored for Sally's story along with her luscious baked goods. She recounted the dramatic tale countless times, feeling rather heroic by the end. When the judging results went up, Sally held her breath. And there it was, a beautiful blue ribbon proclaiming her the county's best youth baker. Sally whooped and jumped up and down, hardly believing her victory after the prior day's setbacks. As Sally helped pack up that evening, she saw Brent being led away to serve time for his crimes. She waved smugly as he passed, his hat now trampled as badly as her ribbon had been. "So long, Mr. Hart," Sally called out sweetly. "I reckon this year's judging was fair after all." The long night of baking had paid off. Sally drove for home with blue ribbons on the front seat next to her, her head held high in victory. She breathed in the fresh country air, feeling grateful to be part of such a supportive community. Sally decided that next year, she would submit some special comeback jam to pay tribute to her jam adventure. Sally smiled up at the emerging stars as she coasted down the last stretch of dusty road leading home. That evening, laughter and joy filled the Hayes' farm kitchen, another set of blue ribbons now hanging proudly on the refrigerator door. If you enjoyed this story or found it of value, please like our video. Subscribe if you want more great story videos to learn English. Thanks for watching.